In our headlines on this Friday, January 30th, here in South Korea. Top trade delegates from Seoul, including Industry Minister Kim Jong-wan and Trade Minister Gu, seek talks with the U.S. counterparts following Trump's social media post of a hike in tariffs on South Korea. Meanwhile, South Korea remains on the U.S.'s watch list of major trading partners whose currency measures call for closer attention. We tell you what this means. And here on the local front, Harold Rogers of e-commerce platform Coupang appears at the Seoul Metropolitan Police Agency this afternoon for questioning over the company's massive leak of customer data. South Korean trade officials are in the U.S. seeking talks with their counterparts there following a unilateral decision by the Trump administration to raise tariffs to 25%. Our Moon Hae-ryun has the latest.
South Korea's top trade officials are mounting an urgent diplomatic push in Washington as the Trump administration signals it may reinstate steep tariffs on Korean goods. Industry Minister Kim Jong-wan met U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick on Thursday local time, though the two sides failed to reach an immediate agreement. Trade Minister Gu is due to meet U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer on Friday, forming a coordinated response by Korea's trade leadership. The tariff threat appears to stem from U.S. frustration over delays in South Korea's domestic legislation tied to last year's trade deal and a $350 billion investment pledge. Minister Kim arrived at the Commerce Department around 5 p.m. and left about an hour and a half later, telling reporters the talks were extensive but inconclusive, with a follow-up meeting scheduled for Friday morning. Asked whether the tariff hike had been blocked, Kim said it was not a matter of having stopped or stopped it, adding that no final conclusion had been reached. Kim said he made clear that Korea remains firmly committed to implementing agreed investments, including the special investment bill, and sought to persuade Washington not to reinstate the tariffs. Trade Minister Ya, ahead of his departure, said the goal of the visit is to assess both the U.S. administration's stance and congressional dynamics, while seeking a reasonable solution to prevent the tariff hike. He plans to explain Korea's political situation and discuss broader trade issues, including digital regulation. The diplomatic scramble comes as President Trump warns that U.S. tariffs could become much steeper, saying current measures were already generous and vital to national security. Speaking at a White House cabinet meeting, Trump argued tariffs have brought in hundreds of billions of dollars and insisted he has no intention of giving that up. As negotiations resume in Washington, this week is shaping up as a critical test, both a challenge and an opportunity for Seoul to prevent another escalation in Korea-U.S. trade tensions. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, South Korea remains on the U.S.'s watch list of major trading partners whose currency measures call for closer attention. Our Park Chun-an covers this reality and its broader implications.
The United States has kept South Korea on its foreign exchange monitoring list. In its semi-annual report to Congress released Thursday local time, the U.S. Treasury listed Korea among 10 other countries, including China, Japan, and Germany, for heightened scrutiny over macroeconomic and exchange rate policies. Under the 2015 Trade Facilitation and Trade Enforcement Act, the U.S. Treasury Department monitors its trading partners using three critical benchmarks. First, a bilateral trade surplus with the U.S. exceeding $15 billion. Second, a current account surplus of 3% or more of the nation's GDP. And third, a persistent one-sided intervention in the foreign exchange market. One-sided intervention requires net purchases of foreign currency conducted repeatedly in at least 8 out of 12 months, totaling at least 2% of an economy's GDP. Currently, South Korea has flagged two of these three indicators. While the trade surplus remains $52 billion and the current account surplus sits comfortably at 5.9%, the third criterion, market intervention, has not yet been met. South Korea was removed from the list in late 2023 but was put back on it in November 2024 and remains there under the latest assessment. An economics professor said the impact on Korea's foreign exchange market would be minimal.
Being designated as a currency monitoring country is not a major issue, as this has been the case for a while. The U.S. preference for a weaker dollar ultimately comes down to exports. It is part of a broader push to revive domestic manufacturing.
In response, the Blue House said the Korean financial authorities will maintain close communication with the U.S. Treasury Department, adding that the U.S. report reaffirms the Korean currency's depreciation against the greenback is not in line with Korea's strong economic fundamentals. Park Junan, Arirang News.
South Korea's industrial output marked its slowest pace of growth in 5 years last year, while consumption regained ground for the first time in 4 years. Our Arirang covers these findings.
South Korea's industrial output in 2025 marked its weakest growth in 5 years, while consumption rebounded to positive levels for the first time in 4 years. According to data from the Ministry of Statistics and Data released on Friday, in December alone, industrial output rose 1.5% from the previous month and 1.8% from a year earlier. Following a 1.1% decline in 2020, when production contracted amid the fallout from the COVID-19 pandemic, total industrial output has risen for 4 consecutive years. 5% in 2021, 4.8% in 2022, 1.1% in 2023, and 1.5% in 2024. Production in the mining and manufacturing sector, considered the backbone of the economy, gained 1.6% in 2025, while the main drive behind last year's industrial output was semiconductors, which rose by 13.2% on year. Amid the boom of artificial intelligence, it was the surge in chip demand that contributed largely to keeping overall output figures at positive levels. Meanwhile, retail sales, a key indicator of private consumption, turned positive after 3 consecutive years of shrinking, increasing 0.9% on month, mainly supported by higher sales of clothing, food, and beverages. The ministry says growth was particularly strong in the third quarter of 2025, boosted by government-issued consumption coupons. The cyclical component of the Coincident Composite Index, which reflects current economic conditions, fell by 0.2 points from the previous month, while the cyclical component of the Composite Leading Indicator, which signals future economic conditions, rose by 0.6 points compared to the previous month. 이은진, Arirang News.
In other news, the price of common electronic devices, including PCs, TVs, and your smartphones, has been on the rise in recent times as chip makers focus on AI components over lower-tier chips. Our Kim Jun-hong explains.
This is Bae Jin-sung, who has spent 39 years running a custom PC store here in Yongsan, one of Seoul's major electronic hubs. These days, however, the price tags have long since disappeared from the front of his store. With prices jumping from one day to the next, electronics have effectively turned into goods sold at market price. He calls the situation heartbreaking.
One customer placed an order yesterday and even paid a deposit, but by the time we delivered it today, parts prices had jumped overnight. We have to keep our promise, so we sell at a loss. And it's painful that we can't offer customers lower prices.
Holding up a piece of legacy DDR4 memory, he put it simply. The price of one memory chip has risen to nearly the cost of an entire PC.
This Micron DDR5 memory chip was about $70 3 months ago, but has now more than tripled to around $260.
The ripple effects are quickly spreading to the finished goods market, raising the barrier to entry for consumers.
I came to upgrade my computer's RAM. It's been a long time since my last upgrade, but even for the same level of performance, prices are much higher now, so it's a bit of a burden financially.
The fixed contract price of PC DRAM rose sharply, reaching $9.30 by December last year, nearly 7 times higher than in March. The rise in parts prices is now being passed on to consumers, with the launch price of Samsung Electronics' new Galaxy Book 6 Pro coming close to double that of last year's model. Rising memory prices are now pushing up the cost of other key components, including SSDs and graphic cards. Tucked into a corner of Bae's shop, an NVIDIA graphics card tells the story. In less than a month, its price has climbed by more than $700. This latest turmoil stems from manufacturers prioritizing high-performance memory such as HBM, tightening the supply of lower-margin, widely used memory chips.
From a producer's standpoint, higher profits now lie in AI-related products. Lower margin, general-purpose DRAM has been pushed down the priority list, tightening supply. With AI opening up a new market, many expect this cycle to break from traditional patterns.
The AI boom is now in what many describe as a mega cycle. While the future remains uncertain, experts broadly agree that the surge is unlikely to show signs of easing in the near future. Kim Junong, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, President Lee Jae-myung believes entrepreneurship is key to expanding opportunities for future generations here in the country. Do take a listen.
우리 대한민국 국민들은 정말 뛰어난 역량을 가지고 있습니다. 교육 수준도 그렇고 또 성실함이나 또 집요함, 손기술, 그러니까 뭐 기능이죠. 또 사회적인 인프라, 모든 여건들이 아주 좋은데 전통적인 방식으로 평범하게 일자리를 고용되는 일자리를 좋은 일자리를 만들어내는 건 한계가 있는 것 같습니다.
These remarks were shared on this Friday at the Blue House during a strategy meeting on supporting startups. The president also maintained that deepening economic polarization had weighed on growth and narrowed job opportunities for the young. Accordingly, to encourage entrepreneurship, the Ministry of SMEs and Startups will host a televised competition featuring 100 aspiring entrepreneurs this year. The winner will receive prize money and venture investment worth over 1 billion won. Interim head of Coupang Korea, Harold Rogers, appeared at the Seoul Metropolitan Police Agency earlier on this Friday afternoon amid allegations of evidence tampering and obstruction of justice. Now, this appearance is his first since the start of the investigation into Coupang's massive leak of customer data. Rogers had previously ignored 2 summons requests. Upon arrival at the entrance of the agency, Rogers told members of the media in English that Coupang remains committed to fully cooperating with the government's investigation. While Coupang maintains that only 3,000 accounts were affected, investigators believe the figure stands above 30 million. U.S. President Donald Trump says he asked his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin to refrain from assaults on Ukraine for 1 week in light of the brutally cold weather there next week, with temperatures forecast to plunge to as low as minus 30 degrees Celsius. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
U.S. President Donald Trump says Russian President Vladimir Putin has agreed to pause attacks on Kyiv and other Ukrainian cities for 1 week due to extreme winter weather. Speaking during a televised cabinet meeting in Washington on Thursday, Trump said he personally asked Putin to halt strikes as temperatures across Ukraine plunge. He said Putin agreed not to fire on Kyiv and surrounding towns for a week, citing what Trump described as extraordinary cold conditions.
And because of the cold, extreme cold, they have the same that we do. I personally asked President Putin not to fire on Kyiv and the cities and towns for a week during this. It's extraordinary. It's not just like cold, it's extraordinary cold, record-setting cold.
Russia has not confirmed any such agreement. Trump did not specify when the pause would take effect, but temperatures in Kyiv are forecast to drop sharply starting Thursday night, with lows expected to reach minus 24 degrees Celsius in the coming days. However, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky welcomed Trump's announcement, saying he expects Moscow to keep its word. Zelensky also thanked the United States for efforts to prevent further attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure, which has been repeatedly targeted during the winter months since Russia's full-scale invasion began in 2022.
Thank you, America, for the efforts to halt strikes on energy. We hope the United States can make this happen.
Zelensky added that Ukraine remains in contact with international partners about possible ceasefire talks, emphasizing the need for effective formats and concrete results. Diplomatic efforts are also continuing elsewhere. Russian President Vladimir Putin met with United Arab Emirates President Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan in Moscow on Thursday, ahead of a second round of Ukraine-related talks scheduled to take place in Abu Dhabi. The UAE has emerged as a key mediator in the nearly 4-year war, having brokered multiple prisoner exchanges and recently hosted talks involving U.S., Russian, and Ukrainian officials on a U.S.-drafted proposal to end the fighting. A follow-up meeting is planned for Sunday, though it remains unclear whether U.S. officials will attend. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Back on the local front, in our newscast yesterday, we highlighted the importance of a mindful approach to cooking and eating as encouraged by a Buddhist monk. Well, today we share with you the growing popularity of Korea's temple food among foreign diners here. Our culture correspondent Park Gon-woo files this report.
Long preserved for centuries, Korean temple food is no longer enjoyed only by monks, but by food lovers from around the world. This growing interest can be partially seen at a temple cuisine restaurant in Seoul, operated by the Choge Order of Korean Buddhism, where reservations are often fully booked, including by visitors from abroad.
Today it's a little bit similar to Japanese traditional food, but also more it is Korean food. It tastes more some taste of kimchi. This a little bit spicy food, but it was very delicious, and yeah, I love this delicate taste of this temple food.
Temple cuisine is also drawing strong interest from visitors outside of Asia.
What I think about is that everything is made with a lot of consciousness. I think the idea of food and also of the connection to the rest of the world, that everything is connected. Yeah. But this temple food was first time, but we will take it with us, of course, this idea, and we'll look for any opportunity also in Germany.
So it may seem like a lot of food and slightly different from what monks would normally eat in a single meal. But what we have here is a wide variety of traditional temple dishes. And one standout feature is that they don't use pungent vegetables, including garlic and green onions, nor do they use artificial seasonings. So let's give it a try. A wide variety of temple food includes whitewater kimchi, believed to aid digestion, winter spinach with sweet persimmon, crispy glazed mushrooms that surprisingly taste like meat, and buckwheat jelly with spicy kimchi. Bite after bite, slurp after slurp, diners keep tasting, some even lifting their bowls to finish every last drop. Thanks to its global popularity, temple food is also attracting more visitors from abroad, many traveling to Korea just to learn more about it. Building on this momentum, the Cultural Corps of Korean Buddhism is preparing to sign collaborative agreements to introduce temple food at prestigious culinary schools overseas, including the Culinary Institute of America.
Temple food is becoming so important because people recognize simplicity and the power of it. In a world full of industrial, Western, processed food, we want a healthy body and a healthy spirit with a healthy community, so that we can co-create a healthy world. And I would hope that all types of cuisines and culinary schools work towards that objective.
The Cultural Corps of Korean Buddhism even says reservations for temple food making classes are often fully booked weeks in advance. At the same time, the Choge Order of Korean Buddhism is pushing to have temple food listed as UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage. With tradition, philosophy, and growing global interest coming together, Korean temple food is now stepping onto the world stage. Park Gon-woo, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. The European Union has designated Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist organization following its deadly crackdown on protests. EU foreign ministers reached a decision in Brussels on Thursday, adding the powerful IRGC to the bloc's terror list alongside groups such as Islamic State and Al-Qaeda. This follows the killings of thousands of protesters in Iran, a turning point that pushed previously cautious countries such as France and Italy to back the listing. The EU also sanctioned 15 individuals and 6 entities, targeting Iran's interior minister, senior prosecutors, Revolutionary Guard commanders, and agencies linked to censorship, surveillance, and drone and missile development. Tehran called the EU's move a, quote, major strategic mistake. The U.S. Senate blocked a critical government funding bill, pushing Washington to the brink of a partial shutdown as a fierce dispute over immigration enforcement intensified. Lawmakers failed to advance the budget on Thursday after Democrats refused to fund the Department of Homeland Security, demanding new limits on immigration and customs enforcement operations. The standoff follows the fatal shootings of 2 protesters by federal agents in Minneapolis, prompting Democrats to call for warrants, clear identification of officers, and tighter oversight of ICE. A procedural vote failed 45 to 55, and there will be partial shutdown from this weekend if no deal is reached by the Friday deadline. President Donald Trump said he wants to avoid a shutdown, adding his administration would work in a, quote, bipartisan way to do so. China has halved tariffs on British whiskey after direct talks between Chinese leader Xi Jinping and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer in Beijing. The move on Thursday will cut tariffs from the current 10% to 5% and is expected to generate £250 million in export gains over 5 years for the UK whiskey industry. Starmer raised the issue during meetings aimed at securing economic gains. China also agreed to tighten labeling rules on Scotch whiskey to help strengthen protection against counterfeiting. Beijing has also agreed to allow 30-day visa-free travel for British citizens, although no date for this has been set. Indian authorities have confirmed 2 cases of the deadly Nipah virus in the eastern state of West Bengal, triggering heightened surveillance across Asia. According to local officials and the World Health Organization, both cases are healthcare workers infected in late December. They were West Bengal's first cases in nearly 2 decades. The Nipah virus carries a fatality rate of up to 75%, but experts say human-to-human transmission remains limited and a global outbreak is unlikely. Countries including Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Nepal have tightened airport screening, while health agencies are monitoring the situation closely. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
Cold wave warnings and advisories are still covering parts of the central regions, 전라북도 and 경상북도 provinces. However, we're having one final surge of frigid temperatures as this long cold snap starts to fade. Starting from tomorrow afternoon, colder air will begin to ease off and temperatures will slowly climb. Seoul is expected to drop to minus 11 degrees Celsius again overnight, similar to today. By tomorrow afternoon, however, many areas, including Seoul, will warm back up above freezing temperatures. Temperatures should return to normal levels for this time of year on Sunday. Most areas will have a cold morning tomorrow with Chuncheon at minus 14 degrees, Daejeon at minus 9 degrees. Highs will rise back up to 1 degree in Seoul, 6 degrees in Daegu and Gyeongju. Light snow of around 1 centimeter is possible in center areas and parts of the Jeollado provinces from early Sunday into Monday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up next is our daily panel session.